You are
notice.
distressed that the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks. Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better. And yet your concern is that the Ukrainians, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks.
Right.
I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
What is up, guys? VinceDao here with a remote video for you guys. I'm actually in West Palm Beach right now for the Turning Point event, but you know, the news cycle never stops, so our grind on this channel can never stop either. I did want to talk about this. So on Friday, BlazeTV did a presidential town hall with all these different Republican candidates, hosted by Tucker Carlson, which was pretty cool. And as you can imagine, he actually went back and forth with quite a few of these candidates, but I did want to talk about the most notable exchange of the day, which was the clash here, the epic clash between Tucker and Mike Pence. Now, if you haven't been following the Mike Pence campaign at all, we've reacted to some of his speeches here on this channel. The guy totally out of touch. First of all, he won't stop talking about Ronald Reagan this, Ronald Reagan that. I genuinely think Mike Pence believes he is the reincarnation of Reagan, which is completely silly, and we'll talk about that in a second. But furthermore, basically half of his presidential platform is, we got to give more money to Ukraine. Actually, Biden's not doing enough for Ukraine, all this stuff, you know, and Tucker, as you can imagine, America firster, much like myself, totally grills him and destroys him. And it's quite satisfying to watch on this Russia-Ukraine issue, you know, calling out Mike Pence for being a annoying globalist neocon. So here, check out this clip.
Along the way, the Biden administration has been slow in providing military support. Make no mistake about this. We promised them 33 Abrams tanks in January. I heard again 2 weeks ago in Ukraine, they still don't have them. We've been telling them we'll train their F-16 pilots, but now they're saying maybe January we'll let somebody transfer some jets.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President, have you, I know you're running for president. You are distressed that the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks. Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the United States. And it's visible. Our economy has degraded. The suicide rate has jumped. Public filth and disorder and crime have exponentially increased. And yet, your concern is that the Ukrainians, a country most people can't find on a map, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern.
It's not my concern.
Tucker, I've heard that routine from you before, but that's not my concern. I'm running for president of the United States because I think this country's in a lot of trouble.
It is, and you're not helping it. So there you have that exchange, that clip here. Now, I will say first and foremost, for intellectual honesty, I did clip this from Twitter. Pence basically goes on to say, well, you know, it's not an either or scenario. You know, we can help Ukraine and America at the same time, to which I say maybe that is true, but I don't see the products of that, right? We're a country insanely in debt, all this inflation, and then like Tucker points out, all the cities are having all these problems. And Mike Pence's whole thing is, actually, you saw him say it in this clip. His criticism of Biden is not that, hey, why are we giving $80 billion to Ukraine? Why is the Biden administration fueling the flames, stoking this conflict, right? Because Biden has actively told the Ukrainian government, do not negotiate for peace, do not settle for peace. So, you know, Biden is being anti-peace, but the big concern with Mike Pence is not any of that. It's not, you know, are we inciting World War III? Are we pushing Russia closer into China's camp, which we are? Why are we not settling for peace? Why are we just sitting by and encouraging so many people to just kill each other on both sides? Mike Pence's biggest concern, his only concern with Russia and Ukraine, is that Biden is not doing enough. So you guys got that? American taxpayer, Republican voter in general. Apparently, Mike Pence's whole thing is, you're not giving enough money to Ukraine. You are not supporting Ukraine enough. And his big criticism of Biden is, actually, the $80 billion, however many dollars, was not enough. It is absolutely unhinged. It is absolutely insane. And Tucker pretty brilliantly calls him out on it and makes him look incredibly stupid. Now, here's what I will say. You look at the polls of Mike Pence. He's at 7%. He's not going to go past that. It really does go to show you how out of touch he is with the Republican base. But I do want to bring this up. So, very often, because I've heard Mike Pence talk about this Ukraine thing many times and beyond this segment, very often what he will use as justification for his doctrine on Ukraine is Ronald Reagan. Right? That's all the guy campaigns on. In fact, you listen to his presidential announcement speech and all this stuff. It's just Ronald Reagan this, Ronald Reagan that. I think Mike Pence genuinely believes he is the second incarnation of Ronald Reagan. But there's so many problems with trying to use the Reagan doctrine to justify funding this globalist war in Ukraine. Okay, so let's go through that, because that's the argument he'll bring up. Well, you're not a real conservative because Ronald Reagan would have supported this. Would he, though? That's my question. Would he, though? Because I think we have to break down, first of all, what was the Cold War about? Now, I know the Bush Republicans, especially when Bush took over after Reagan, tried to rewrite the history of the Cold War and anti-communism to be about spreading American values and liberal democracy and globalism all around the world. You know, that's what the neocons did to rewrite the history of the Cold War. But that's actually not true. When you go back and look, it was never about that. It was about stopping the spread of communism. Not even invading the Soviet Union and stopping communism from existing. It was just stopping the spread, right? Domino theory. Don't let the whole world fall to communism. So, first of all, there are so many reasons why this is wrong in trying to use Reagan to justify what you're doing today. Okay, first of all, Russia is no longer the Soviet Union. Okay, so that's first and foremost. So, you know, you can bring that up, but it has nothing to do with the Reagan doctrine, because the Reagan doctrine was about stopping communism. And that was it. That's first and foremost. Secondly, what I would say, though, is that you can bring up Ronald Reagan would have supported this, blah, blah, blah. Would he, though? Because if you look when Ronald Reagan was president, guess what? Ukraine used to be a part of, guess what? The Soviet Union, right? It used to be a part of Russia, you could say. And when you look at the historic Cold War policy, again, it wasn't about, no one was ever saying invade the Soviet Union, take it over. We were saying just stop the spread of it, right? But if you look to the 1980s, Ukraine would have been seen as within Russia's territorial influence. Now, you might say it shouldn't be like that today, but let me finish this point, right? Ukraine, Ronald Reagan would not have cared about a conflict in Ukraine, because he would see that at the time, right, as Soviet conflict internally. And his big thing is, we want to stop the spread of communism around the rest of the world. You see what I'm saying there? And so my question then is, if Ukraine is now within the American sphere of influence, right, because before it stopped at NATO and the, you know, and then the Warsaw Pact on the other side. So is our whole thing here is that we're just going to expand the American sphere of influence to the entire world, right? Because under Reagan, Ukraine would have been seen as part of Russia's sphere of influence, right? This is our part of the world, it's their part of the world. If now Ukraine, and marching, inching, more and more, is our part of the world, that it's our job to morally police all of this stuff, how far does that go? Genuinely, how far does that end? Right? There's so many problems with that argument, trying to use, and by the way, I'm not saying that there aren't other arguments we could address about Ukraine or this or that. I'm just saying to use the Reagan doctrine, which he won't stop doing, he won't stop virtue signaling about. He calls us fake conservatives because we don't support Ronald Reagan. To use the Reagan doctrine and claim it has anything to do with Ukraine today is just wrong on so many levels. And by the way, let me say this furthermore, it is out of touch, Mike Pence. Okay? It is out of touch. I'm not saying that Reagan didn't do some good things as president. By the way, I think he did some bad things that, you know, people ought to acknowledge more. But, you know, overall, right, he did revive conservatism in the 80s. You know, overall, I think he was a net positive, a good president. But to constantly use him, as you will hear anytime you hear Mike Pence speak outside of this clip, to constantly use him as the ideological justification for your campaign and your brand of conservatism is completely outdated, right, and out of touch. Because first and foremost, the vast majority, I don't know the numbers exactly, but a very large share of the electorate today either A, was not even alive when Ronald Reagan was president, right? I certainly wasn't alive when he was president, or B, was too young to really remember those Reagan years, you know? Because think about that. You're talking, someone has to be like over 60 years old to even have a strong memory, right, of the Reagan presidency. And so to constantly use this guy, you know, like him or not, as the justification for your entire candidacy all the time, this is all Mike Pence ever says, that is so outdated. Who are you trying to appeal to, right? You got a younger electorate to win. Sorry, I hate to break it to you. And so that's wrong on so many levels. And then secondly, again, you know, think what you will about Ronald Reagan, but I would argue a lot of the things he tried to do were for the problems of the 1980s, the problems of the Cold War, right? We don't need to go back to Reagan. And I know some people would like to see that, but frankly, we really don't. We need a vision forward. There are a lot of problems in the 21st century. Some would attribute it to the shortcomings of the Reagan Revolution. Some would say it came from Bush and the people after. I'm not even here to get into that debate, but the sheer fact of the matter is that the problems that America faces today are not problems mostly that were around in the 1980s, right? We want solutions for stuff going forward. What do we do about the immigration crisis today? What do we do about our cities today? What do we do about something like ESG, woke capital, AI even, right? There's so many 21st century problems that Ronald Reagan was never around to address, and you can't just constantly appeal to the past to address. I know we're conservatives, but we need a vision forward, right? And so I think constantly appealing to this, Reagan that, as Mike Pence will often do, is just wrong on so many levels. And then, of course, he does go on to say, well, in that clip, he says, well, we can fix both at the same time. Oh, it's not one or the other. We can fix America and Ukraine too. Okay. But do you understand you're campaigning hypothetically to win an American electorate here, right? So do you think that Americans care more to hear about how their own problems are going to be fixed, right? Think, whatever your foreign policy is, I get it. Do you think Americans care more about seeing their own problems fixed, or constantly hearing about Ukraine this, Ukraine that, Ukraine? Because that's all I ever hear from Mike Pence. See how it's out of touch on so many levels? I think there's a reason why Mike Pence is polling so low, and I thought Tucker was absolutely right in that. And, I honestly would like to hear Mike Pence try to make an argument for this Ukraine stuff that does not appeal to some ridiculous cliche, right? Because it really boils down to a number of different things. You'll always hear him say, Vladimir Putin is a dictator. Okay, there's a lot of dictators. To quote Trump, there's a lot of killers out there. Are we going to overthrow every single one? Is that the issue, right? Or we say, it's literally like World War II. They're going to take over all of Europe. Well, I don't see evidence of that. And then they'll say that, but this is my big thing, as I've been often calling for. I'm saying we should settle peace. Right? I think at this point, the best thing we can do, because let's be realistic, Russia is going to walk away with this for something. Why not settle for peace? They say, no, you're kind of Putin. Why shouldn't Ukraine get to defend itself? Well, if Ukraine decides on their own that they want to fight to the last man, woman, and child, fine. Then that's their decision as a people, as a country. That's fine. That's self-determination. I'm fine with that. But that's not really what's happening here. The United States is actively saying we need to keep them in this fight, right? So my question is, okay, if Ukraine wants to fight to the last man, fine. But why should it be American policy to basically promote endless bloodshed, which is what we're doing, right? Like, why? Why should we do that? Why not settle for peace now, assuming, like I said, I don't think realistically you're going to drive Russia out of all of Ukraine. I don't think Russia's going to take all of Ukraine either. So why not say, okay, let's stop the stalemate, stop the bloodshed here. That's rational. I think that's a rational take, but Mike Pence apparently thinks that's not. But he can't say anything that doesn't appeal to cliches. Oh, Ronald Reagan, Cold War, the Soviets, the Nazis. It's just no argument, okay? And I think that a lot of people are sick and tired of the cliches, which is why, Mike Pence, you are losing very badly, and you constantly just appealing to Ronald Reagan to justify. That's the only thing he has going for him. Again, a lot of conservatives like Ronald Reagan, but that's not enough. Because first of all, you're not Reagan, okay? You know who else tried to constantly say he was Ronald Reagan? George H.W. Bush. How did that go, right? So just shut up, dude. Mike Pence. Okay, what a disgrace. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Say hi to me if you do see me at the Turning Point SAS at Con event this weekend. And yeah, until then, Alpha Moves only. God bless. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe before you go. Let me know your thoughts again, and see you guys later. Peace. Hey guys, Vince Dow here. Hope you enjoyed that clip from the Vince Dow Show. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you are new to the channel. And be sure to check out the Vince Dow Show live every weeknight here on this channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It is a great show. Many are saying this. So leave a like, check out our other clips, and be sure to check out the show. God bless.